October 23rd, 1974. Madison Square Garden, New York City, 2:47 a.m. The concert had ended 3 hours ago, but backstage, security guard Mike Walsh was doing his final sweep before locking up. He was tired. He wanted to go home. He'd already found two drunk fans passed out in bathroom stalls and escorted them out. This was supposed to be his last walkthrough. That's when he heard breathing. Not normal breathing. Panicked, shallow breathing, coming from behind a stack of road cases near Bob Dylan's dressing room. Mike grabbed his flashlight and moved toward the sound. "Whoever's back there, come out now. Building's closing." Silence. Then more breathing. Faster now, like someone trying desperately not to hyperventilate. Mike shined his light between the cases, and there, wedged into a space barely big enough for a child, was a young man. Maybe 18, maybe 20. His face was filthy. His clothes were torn. His eyes were wild with terror. "Please," the kid whispered, "please don't call the cops." Mike reached for his walkie-talkie, but before he could press the button, a voice behind him said, "Wait." Bob Dylan was standing in the corridor, still wearing his stage clothes, a cigarette between his fingers. He'd heard everything. What happened in the next 30 minutes would save a life, and it would reveal a side of Bob Dylan that nobody knew existed. The side that understood exactly what it meant to run from something you couldn't name. The young man's name was Tommy Sullivan. He was 18 years old, and he'd been living in Madison Square Garden for 4 days. Not in a clever way. He'd been hiding, sleeping in storage rooms, stealing food from catering tables, using bathroom sinks to wash, trying to become invisible because the alternative was going back to Pittsburgh, back to a father whose fists spoke louder than words. Tommy had tried to leave before, 3 times, and 3 times his father had found him, dragged him back, made sure he understood what happened to boys who ran. But this time was different. Tommy had taken a bus to New York with money stolen from his father's wallet. He'd arrived with no plan, no friends, no idea what he'd do next, just the certainty that anything was better than home. For a week, he'd slept in Port Authority, but police swept the terminal every night, and on day 7, they'd threatened arrest. So Tommy started sneaking into venues, concert halls, sports arenas, anywhere with enough chaos that one skinny kid could disappear. He'd been at Madison Square Garden since Saturday, slipping in with the crew during load-in, hiding when security swept, eating leftover catering. It had worked for 3 days, but tonight, exhausted and desperate, he'd fallen asleep. And Mike Walsh had found him. Now standing in the harsh backstage lights with Bob Dylan and a security guard staring at him, Tommy felt the familiar panic rising. They were going to call his father. They were going to send him back. And this time, there would be no fourth escape. Dylan looked at Mike Walsh. "Give us a minute." Mike hesitated. "Mr. Dylan, I need to report this." "Give us a minute." The tone wasn't a request. Mike nodded, stepped back 20 feet. Dylan turned to Tommy. The kid was shaking, not from cold, from fear so deep it had become part of his DNA. "What's your name?" "Tommy." "How old are you?" 18. "Where are you from?" "Pittsburgh." "Your family know where you are?" The question hit like a fist. Tommy's jaw tightened. "I don't have family." Dylan took a drag from his cigarette. He'd heard that lie before. Hell, he'd told that lie before. Everybody's got family. Question is whether family's worth going back to. Tommy's head snapped up. His eyes were wet. "You don't know anything about my family." "You're right, but I know what it looks like when someone's running. And I know the difference between running towards something and running away from something." Dylan pointed at Tommy's backpack. "That everything you own?" Tommy nodded. "How long you been gone?" 12 days. "They looking for you?" "My father wants me back, but not because he misses me." Dylan understood. He didn't need details. He could see it in the kids' eyes. Kids who'd been hurt by the people who were supposed to protect them. Kids who'd learned that home wasn't always safe. Security wants to call the police. They'll contact your parents, send you back. You know that, right? Tommy's face crumbled. "Please, I can't go back there." Dylan turned to Mike Walsh. "What happens if we don't call?" Mike shifted uncomfortably. "Mr. Dylan, he's been here 4 days. That's trespassing." "What if I pay for the food? What if I take responsibility for him?" I don't think it works that way. Why not? He's 18, legal adult. If I vouch for him, who's he hurting? Mike didn't have an answer. Dylan looked at Tommy. Here's what's going to happen. You're coming with me. We're getting you food, clean clothes, and a place to sleep that isn't behind equipment cases. Tomorrow we figure out what comes next. But tonight you're safe. You understand? Tommy stared at Dylan like he'd just spoken a foreign language. Why would you do that? Because 15 years ago, I was a kid who didn't fit where I came from. And the only reason I survived was because people helped me when they didn't have to. Dylan stubbed out his cigarette. You hungry? Tommy nodded, unable to speak. Mike, this kid's with me. He's part of my crew now. That work for you? Mike sighed. Your responsibility, Mr. Dylan. It won't be a problem. Dylan put his hand on Tommy's shoulder. Come on, kid. As they walked away, Tommy whispered, I don't understand. Dylan smiled. I know enough. Dylan took Tommy to an all-night diner on 8th Avenue. It was 3:30 a.m. The place was nearly empty. Just a few cab drivers scattered across cracked vinyl booths. They sat in the back. Dylan ordered coffee. Tommy ordered nothing, too afraid to ask. Order food, Dylan said. Whatever you want. I don't have money. I didn't ask if you had money. Tommy's hands shook as he looked at the menu. When was the last time he'd eaten a real meal? Days. He couldn't remember. Pancakes and eggs and bacon. Order more. That's already too much. Tommy added hash browns and orange juice. When the waitress left, Dylan lit another cigarette and studied the kid across from him. You going to tell me why you ran? Does it matter? Matters if you want my help. Tommy picked at a napkin, tearing it into small pieces. My father drinks. When he drinks, he gets angry. When he gets angry, Tommy stopped. He hits you, Dylan finished quietly. Tommy nodded. Since I was 12. My mom left when I was 14. She tried to take me, but my father said no, so she left without me. How bad did it get? Last time, he broke 2 of my ribs. Before that, my nose. I realized if I stayed, one day he'd go too far. The food arrived. Tommy stared at the plate like it might disappear. Eat, Dylan said gently. Tommy ate like he was afraid someone would take it away. He ate so fast he made himself sick, but he didn't stop. This was his first hot meal in almost 2 weeks. Dylan watched in silence, and in watching, he saw himself. The kid version. The one who'd left home at 19 with nothing but a guitar and the certainty that he didn't belong in Hibbing, Minnesota. After Tommy finished eating, Dylan asked the question that would change everything. What do you want to do, Tommy, with your life? Nobody had ever asked Tommy that before. I don't know. You got any skills? Things you're good at? I can fix things. Cars, mostly. I used to work at my uncle's garage before my dad made me quit. Said I was wasting time. You good at it? Yeah, I'm good at it. Dylan pulled out a notebook and started writing. I've got a guy in Los Angeles. Runs a custom car shop. Does work for musicians, film people. Always looking for mechanics. He tore out the page. His name's Eddie. Tell him I sent you. He'll give you a job. Tommy stared at the paper. I can't go to California. I don't have money. I'll give you money for a bus ticket. Eddie'll let you sleep in the garage until you find a place. You'll work, you'll save, and 6 months from now, you'll have your own apartment. Why would you do this? Dylan leaned back. Because I believe everyone deserves one person who sees them and says, you're worth saving. The alternative, sending you back to Pittsburgh, that's not an option. You ran for a reason. Don't waste the courage it took. Dylan took Tommy back to his hotel. He booked a separate room and paid cash. Sleep, real sleep. Tomorrow we'll figure out the details. Tommy stood in the doorway, unable to believe it was real. A bed, clean sheets, safety. Mr. Dylan, it's just Dylan. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Thank me when you're in California with a paycheck. The next morning, Dylan came back with clothes. Jeans, shirts, a jacket, all new. They spent the day making arrangements. Dylan called Eddie in Los Angeles, explained the situation without giving too many details. Eddie agreed immediately. Send him out. Dylan bought Tommy a bus ticket to Los Angeles. gave him $500 cash, wrote down Eddie's address and phone number. This money's for food emergencies. When you get to LA, call Eddie from the station. He'll pick you up. Tommy looked at the cash. More money than he'd ever held. What if I mess this up? Then you'll learn. But you won't mess it up because for the first time, you're going to have people who want you to succeed. That afternoon, Dylan walked Tommy to Port Authority, the same place Tommy had arrived 12 days earlier, terrified and alone. But this time was different. They stood outside the bus gate. Tommy's bus to Los Angeles was boarding in 15 minutes. I don't know what to say, Tommy said. Then don't say anything. Just get on that bus. Just show up in LA. Just give yourself a chance. Tommy nodded. Then he hugged Dylan. Dylan stiffened. He wasn't a hugger. But then he put his arms around the kid. You saved my life, Tommy whispered. No, you saved your own life when you got on that bus from Pittsburgh. I just made sure you didn't have to go back. They pulled apart. Tommy picked up his backpack. Now it held clean clothes, hope, and a future. Final boarding for Los Angeles. Tommy started toward the gate, then turned back. Will I ever see you again? Dylan smiled. World's smaller than you think. Tommy boarded. Dylan watched through the window. Their eyes met one last time. Tommy raised his hand. Dylan nodded. The bus pulled away, carrying Tommy Sullivan toward a life he'd never dared to dream possible. Dylan stood there long after the bus disappeared. Someone recognized him, started to approach, but saw his face and thought better of it. Because in that moment, Bob Dylan wasn't a famous musician. He was just a man who'd seen himself in a terrified kid and decided to do what someone had done for him years ago. Believed that he was worth saving. Tommy Sullivan arrived in Los Angeles on October 27, 1974. Eddie picked him up at the bus station, took one look at this skinny kid with haunted eyes, and understood immediately why Dylan had sent him. Eddie didn't ask questions. He showed Tommy the garage, the small apartment above it, and said, You work hard, you've got a home here. Tommy worked harder than anyone Eddie had ever hired. He was there first thing in the morning and last to leave at night. Within 6 months, he was Eddie's best mechanic. Within a year, customers were requesting him specifically. Within 5 years, he'd saved enough to buy a partnership. By 1985, Tommy owned the garage outright. Eddie had retired, sold his share, and moved to Arizona. The shop became Sullivan's Custom Works, where rock stars and car collectors went for the impossible. Tommy never forgot where he came from. He never forgot the night Bob Dylan found him hiding backstage. And he never forgot what Dylan had given him, not just money or a job, but belief that he deserved better. Over the years, Tommy hired dozens of young mechanics, kids with troubled pasts, kids running from something, kids who needed someone to believe in them. And to every single one, he told the same story. 15 years ago, I was sleeping behind equipment cases in Madison Square Garden. I was 18, broke, and convinced I had no future. Then Bob Dylan found me, and instead of calling the police, he asked me what I wanted to do with my life. Nobody had ever asked me that before. Bob Dylan never talked about Tommy Sullivan publicly. When asked about charitable work, he'd shrug it off. I help people sometimes. Doesn't seem worth discussing. But Tommy talked about it. In interviews about his business, in speeches at youth centers for runaway teens. In the autobiography he published in 2003 called The Night Dylan Saved My Life, Dylan read the book. Never said anything publicly, but Tommy received a letter, postmarked from Malibu, with one sentence, Proud of you, kid. BD. Tommy framed that letter. It hung in his office for the rest of his life. The lesson of October 23, 1974 isn't about fame or money. It's about seeing someone when they're invisible. About asking, what do you want? Instead of, what's wrong with you? About giving someone a chance when the world has decided they don't deserve one. Tommy Sullivan died in 2018. He was 62 years old. His obituary mentioned his successful business and his work with homeless youth. But the last paragraph mentioned the night that changed everything. Mr. Sullivan credited Bob Dylan with saving his life in 1974. He saw me when I was invisible, Sullivan wrote in his autobiography. He treated me like I mattered when nobody else thought I did. That's the greatest gift you can give another person. That gift rippled forward. Every kid Tommy hired, every runaway he helped, every young person he told, "You're worth more than your worst day," they were all echoes of what Dylan had done that night. Because on October 23rd, 1974, Bob Dylan didn't just help one runaway teen. He started a chain reaction of kindness that saved hundreds of lives over 4 decades. Tommy used to say, "Dylan gave me a bus ticket and $500, but what he really gave me was permission to believe I deserved a future." And that's the one thing you can't buy.